screen?
Yep.
Good.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Holder, and I'm here on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer with my friend and partner in the Ibbetson Street, Harris Gardner. And we're going to be talking a bit about the issue of new issue of Ibbetson Street. But I'm going to read a small introduction to Ibbetson Street. Harris Gardner and I go way back, but we both met through Stone Soup Poetry, founded by the late Jack Powers, now in the capable hands of Shad Parento. At one time, I was the president of Stone Soup Poets for a year when it went to nonprofit, and Harris was involved in organizing activities, et cetera, et cetera. For the past few years, Harris has been the poetry editor for the Ibbetson Street magazine and has brought the magazine to a new level, a good one. The magazine was started in 1998 in my old residence on 33 Ibbetson Street. I now live on School Street outside of Union Square, and I started the magazine with my friend Richard Wilhelm and my wife Diane Robitaille, I worked with Richard Wilhelm for many years at McLean Hospital. The magazine is now affiliated and partially supported by Endicott College, where I teach. And since 1998, we have published 35 issues of Ibbetson Street, this being the 35th that we just released, and close to 100 perfect bound and chapbooks of poetry, even some memoir. Issue 35, which was just released last month, as we said, was dedicated to the late poet Ed Gehling, who passed away at 96 last December. Ed was in every issue of Ibbetson Street Press. Harris, you were known as a poetry activist, and you started, among other things, the Boston National Poetry Festival at the Boston Public Library every April during Poetry Month. And you are a published poet as well. Many times published. How does it feel to be on the other side of the track as poetry editor rather than submitting your poetry?
Well, I have to say it's pretty humbling in one sense, because there's the old axiom that says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged and found wanting." Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Everybody's heard that biblical admonition. It's a lot of responsibility. It requires a lot of care, a lot of neutrality, because since I am pretty well known for a lot of different things in the poetry world, I frequently get submissions from friends, and I have to have a critical eye even with friends. The being poetry editor also has this awards where I can reach out to some of those national acclaimed and recognized poets that I know, and ask them, invite them to send poetry. And it's very rare that I get turned down in my requests. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I was just, and that actually leads, transitions well into the next question. You've brought in some emerging talent and also some very big names to Ibbetson Street, which we're very grateful for. Can you talk about some of them that you brought in, some of the emerging and some of the big ones?
Okay. Well, one person who's become a regular in Ibbetson Street is Marlene Phipps Kettlewell, who is relatively known, but I'm not sure in poetry how well known she is on the national stage. But I got her initially in hot copy in one of your Federal Express envelopes a few issues back. And ever since, she's been sending it to one or the other of the managing editors. And so Marlene Phipps Kettlewell is a major Haitian American writer, both prose and poetry, and a writer of quality. Then there's Ted Kuzer, who is a former National Poet Laureate. I just reached out, kind of cold calling on the internet.
But we should also mention that I think we both got him as Affa Michael Weaver. Actually, you went after him.
Yeah.
But Affa actually won for us and himself the Pushcart Prize in Literature in 2014 we were in the anthology.
He was my next one.
Huh?
I would have mentioned him next, but
Oh, okay.
you and I are in the same
All right,
wavelength,
right.
so that's okay.
And he just won a big Tufts what was it, Kingsley
Tufts, right?
Award,
$100,000
100,000 smackers.
prize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. Hi, Alpha, if you're out there. And who else?
No, Alpha is one of the premier African American writers in the country today, in my opinion, and he has, I believe, 13 published collections of poetry and 3 published and performed plays, and so. As I say, the Pushcart and the Pulitzer both have 8 letters to them. So I guess his winning the Pushcart through our nomination, the journal's nomination, might be good omen for winning the Pulitzer. Anyway, if you want to go on, we got Gene Valentine, we got Michael Collier.
And he's the head of the what? He runs
Bread Loaf Writers Conference.
Right.
And he's got about 4 books published. We had John Scoyles.
Used to run Plowshares, didn't he? Was the editor of
He's
Plowshares?
a poetry editor of Plowshares, still is, I think. And he's got 4 or 5 of his own collections. We've had numerous people, X.J. Kennedy, Brendan Galvin.
By the way, I'm opening for X.J. Kennedy later this month at the Longfellow House as part of the New England
July
Poetry Club.
17th, right?
No, July.
Oh, sorry.
July 13th.
Oh, during the week?
No, it's during. Isn't it? Is it? Yeah, no, it's the 13th.
Oh,
is a Sunday.
it is the Sunday, right?
Anyway, go ahead.
I'm thinking of Arthur is going to be reading at the Grolier, July.
All right.
17th.
Well, I think we get a good idea. We have Marge Percy every issue, and
she discovered us. I can't take any credit for that.
Right. But I was going to ask you, what do you look for in a poem? What do you look for for a poem that you will accept for Ibbetson Street?
Whether it's free verse or whether it's in form, there's a number of things I look for that apply equally to both. The musicality of the line, that's dealing with the rhythm through the various tools, of poetry, alliteration, assonance, dissonance, and rhyme, internal rhyme. Free verse doesn't have to rhyme, but the more of the tools of poetry that it has that make it a poem, plus content, what everybody looks for, subject matter that rocks me.
Okay.
Something I haven't seen before necessarily, or if I've seen it before many times, something that has an extraordinarily new approach.
Good. And, of course, you can reach Harris. We're doing all email now submissions. We've stopped with paper. And Harris's email, if you want to submit some poems, 3 to 5 with a small bio, no simultaneous submissions, at Ibbetson Press, at Tapestry of Voices, TAPSTRY, of Voices, one word, at yahoo.com, right?
Yep.
Okay, so do that. And if you want to order Ibbetson Street 35, the Ed Gilling tribute issue here, you can go to ibbetsonpress.com and go to the publication section and order one, or write to me at 25 School Street, Somerville, Mass. 02143, and I'll send you one. It's $9, $2 postpaid. All right. Well, we're going to, as promised, we're going to read some select poems. I'll do a little round robin here with Harris. I'm going to, since it's an Ed Gilling tribute issue, and Ed has passed away. I never met him in the flesh after all the 16 years, but I did speak to him all the time. And he was a Jewish poet, very much so, and he grew up in the Lower East Side of New York and often wrote about his experience in the Lower East Side of New York, which was a teeming place of immigrants and pushcart peddlers and all that. So I'm going to read the poem from Ed Gilling. It's called Prayers. I remember my father praying on the rooftop of our tenement house, Lower East Side, New York, when so many pushcarts lined Orchard Street. People threw garbage out of windows, the street so crowded, people walked sideways. My father would take his prayer books to the roof every Friday night, every Sabbath, walking up the many steps to the fire door that opened to the roof. I was 10 years old, and as the sun went down, a kind of pall settled over the city. The east side, the moon, the stars, host to my father's prayers. When he read the Siddur, lights turned on in the tenement windows. My father's voice rang out, humble and worshipful for all of mankind. Before you read yours, I just want to mention that Lawrence Kessenich and Renee Scheisel do a... did I mispronounce Renee's? Schweisel. It's a difficult name, I'm sorry.
It really is.
Do a wonderful job as managing editors of the they format and even choose some poems. Lawrence did issue 35, and also has a poem in this issue, a wonderful poem. And Steve Glines, who designs our magazines and publishes our magazines. I'm eternally grateful to him for many things that he does for Ibbetson Street. So if you're out there, guys, thank you very much. All right, go ahead.
Paired with Prayers on the same page is a poem by A.D. Winans from San Francisco, who's a major West Coast, and if not a full-blown national poet. He's got over 60 books published. Anyway, both poetry and prose. So he wrote a poem called For Ed Gehling. A rose blooms deep in the memory bank in the garden of poetry you tended to with loving care. You wrote your poems in the language of the people, kept your gnarled fingers dancing across the keyboard until you folded like a ballerina, wavering without a safety net, the Black Panther of death stalking your poetic soul. Your eyes, an abandoned lighthouse, steer you toward the galaxy where the man in the moon waits to greet you. Your spirit in full bloom tends to the stars, rides the galaxy where new poems wait to be cut into like a wedding cake. Words clear and pure, never obscure, no metaphor tricks, no simile illusions, 10 fingers working the keyboard like a magician secure in his trade. Go, my friend, to that tomb in the sky where lovers wait at every intersection and light shines eternal.
Fitting tribute. Now I'm going to read something from a person I've worked with at McLean Hospital. I've been there since 1982, and I've run poetry groups and things like that. Wendy Renan has a book called The Quiet Room Poetry out that I reviewed, and I interviewed her. She's a psychotherapist there, and she has a poem called Service for Orlia. The way you arrived, you were gone. No solace in knowing the mechanics of why. No brace for the family standing bedside at the brink. Let it be said, no one comprehends. Dead. On the road that stole you and should have led elsewhere, mystery melts into prophecy. Why you called old friends that final year. Why the driver walked out whole, forever harmed. In the voice, wind ushers over ice. Through falling pines, there is no rhyme. All stand to sing, recite a line or two. Go home, stone against stone.
See, now I can tell why I picked them. They read well. They
I picked that one.
Oh, sorry. I said we, didn't I?
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we pick them like that. You can tell from both how they look on the page and how they sound to the ear.
Okay.
Canticote. This is by Daniel Tobin, former acting dean of Emerson College and former chair of their Department of Writing, Publishing, Literature. He's won a couple of NEA fellowships and a Guggenheim, and the list goes on who he is. He's got, at least 6 book collections of his own. Anyway, Canticle. To trespass outside my house and see this begonia bright with moonlight, shining as from the inside out with its decorous dawn blush haze, livid against its sunset leaves, should spur me to praise whatever it is must be behind all this, O numinous. Were it not for that homeless man I witnessed, scooping up the coin-filled cup of his brother slumped in a chair, his wheels against the wall propped there like a blighted frieze. His head in his hands past caring, in dusk a pall of lead, while I continued home to this iridescent bloom, the brilliant moon, in longing for the uncreated.
I interviewed, Dan Tobin was on this show. It was a very interesting interview. Lo Galuccio, a friend of us, she's the Cambridge Populist poet. And by the way, you were involved in getting the Populist poet in Cambridge, right?
More or less.
Yeah.
I was on the selection committee.
On the
Let's
selection
put it that
committee.
way.
And Lo is now the Populist. And I published books by her. I've known her a long time. And she has a book called Hot Rain that we published some time ago. But I'm going to read a poem by Lo Galuccio. It's called Drinks with Al Pacino. Whenever I reach for help in the wrong direction and the queen turns into the joker card, I don't waste time bitching and moaning. I go for a drink with Al Pacino. Yes, the Godfather Coppola's famous saga, who has his brother killed saying a Hail Mary. That rugged Italian delinquent and brilliant actor studio virtuoso who insiders say had a clandestine affair with Diane Keaton for many years. When a shrink infuriates me by asking if I'm safe, meaning not going to blow off my head, and I get edgy, I conjure up Al Pacino and head over to the Hong Kong for a cocktail or two, and we talk about it. He tells me I'm too headstrong and that I'm stupid to get angry. Twirling a pineapple, he reminds me of what happened to Sonny, who's set up and blown to bits on the causeway. He tells me that I've got a venerable Italian heritage and that all of us are prone to temperamental outbursts but have Machiavellian minds. He reminds me of Fellini and Anna Magnani and of the humble beginnings as a young thug in New York City. He says to me with those deep brown eyes and a swig of amaretto, just keep it cool, baby. The only person you can really fool is yourself, and that's a bad way to go. Fool everybody else and you've got an ace in the hole. Well, he says, pursing his lips, sometimes you can't, but it's usually better to die trying.
Potent.
Yeah.
How many more do I have?
Just go ahead, I'll tell you.
Okay. I'm going to sneak this one in. The Sirens of Route 101, taken from a news report from Epping, New Hampshire. In between eastbound.
Who wrote this?
Oh, sorry. I got to read the epigram too. Plantings on Highway 101 cause traffic headaches. And it's by Leni Seneschal.
I think we know her.
Yeah, she's a painter and a poet
Right.
with many publications and a few books to her credit.
Right.
In between eastbound and westbound we flourish. As traffic whizzes by, we take life in slow motion, imperceptibly follow the sun across the late summer sky, festooned with brilliant petals that surround our dark hearts where seeds slowly ripen. We entice the bees, then lure the chickadees and finches with our bounty. But here on Highway 101, drivers, mesmerized by our seductive beauty, abandon their commutes to commune with the blossoms, as if some old song, barely remembered, has called them home again.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say who did the beautiful front and back cover. The front cover was done by acquaintance of mine, Ash Troberg, who lives in Brooklyn, New York, and runs the Brooklyn Voice online literary magazine. She did a picture of Ed Gehling. She worked on it a long time, and I see her stuff. It's just wonderful stuff, and she's totally committed to her work. She is a very impressive woman, so I thank her for that. And the back, which she's done many front covers, is by local artist Bridget Galway, a very talented woman, who I've used many of her covers on Ibbetson Street, and so they really add a lot to something. Hopefully Ash will consent for us to use another picture in the future before she becomes too famous. Okay. I was going to read something by Lawrence Kessenich, our editor. It's a long poem, so it may take us to the end here, but and Lawrence's poem is on page 7. Afterlife, day 1. It's like returning to the place you're from, but didn't know, the way an adopted child raised somewhere far away must feel when taken to a strange town and told, this is your home. Day 2. Everything you knew and loved begins to flake away, dried paint from an ancient statue, remnants of a civilization that now seems like those you read about in school, fascinating, impossibly distant. Day 3. Your individuality begins to melt like the wicked witch of the West, all your beautiful wickedness, and you do see its beauty as it goes, melting in a puddle that was once your feet. Day 4. Not yet pure spirit, still in your astral body, you find yourself zinging about madly like a finch released from a tiny bamboo cage, who finds he can thread the 1,000 leaves of a giant ginkgo without nicking one of them. Day 5. It begins to dawn on you that that little bird of your soul is an illusion, that you are more like an atom in the corporate body of the one soul, that even this way of seeing is holding you back. Day 6. You become little more than an impulse in the grand field of energy that is a being, and yet you are not diminished. You are becoming more. Day 7. Some would say that you are one with everything, but that assumes a you that no longer exists, a you not even faint as the song of a whale across 10,000 miles of ocean. You are now the utter silence of those ocean depths. Now you are nothing. Now you are everything. We still have 6 minutes, though.
That's one
Get us
awesome.
on? Yeah.
That's one awesome poem.
It is a marvelous poem. Actually, I'll tell you right now, Lawrence, I'm going to be nominating that for a pushcart prize. So, okay.
This is a sonnet by Denise Provost.
Who's the state rep here in Somerville? Yep.
Right.
And a marvelous poet. Hi, Denise, if you're listening.
This title is Creatures of Two Worlds, and her epigraph is, yonder is the great and wide sea, and there is that great Leviathan, which you have made for the sport of it, from Psalm 104, 26 to 27, lines 26 and 27. The Lord perhaps made our race for his sport, huge bodies, ocean-born, which need to breathe an atmosphere beyond, above. Cavort we will in our wide seas. We mate and feed deep in the salty soup where we abide. Yet rise we must. We're tethered to the air that God determined we must take inside our massive lungs. We don't ask if it's fair or sensible to make a shuttle so between the water, comforting, serene, in our bright breathing dome. We cannot know your purpose, Lord. Still our belief has been, we're not your joke, but part of your grand plan, that pattern on which to model humans.
I'm going to read something from, we have 4 minutes, so it's from Stacy Esch. And she did a wonderful illustration of one of my poems, and she's out in Pennsylvania. And it's called Surfer Girl. Here comes another wave, surfer girl, epic swell, fatal curl. Dig in for the push and swim on to the crush. You measure it. It's not even close to the size of your heart. No match for your smallest muscle. Dig in, surfer girl. Slice right into it, cut it in half, point your spear into the thick of it. Arms like double blades, shoulders strong to the hilt. Against that power, dive. 3 minutes. Do you have a real short one? All right.
I give you the shortest one
right.
in the magazine, if I can find it. It took me 30 seconds to find it, for Pete's sakes. I know what it looks like and where it is. It's kind of cute. Here it is. Oops. Give me 1 second.
No, we're almost off the air. Come on.
All right, here we go. A winter sunset. just for a cooling thought in the
I
summertime.
hope it's a short one. Go ahead.
At the foot of the hill, the trees have pulled on boots.
Who wrote this? Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Who wrote it?
I was going to say his name at the end,
Oh, all right, go ahead.
so I won't have
All right.
people biased one way
All
or
right,
the
all
other.
right, go ahead.
A winter sunset. At the foot of the hill, the trees have pulled on boots of shadow. Where, I ask them, do they think they're going? Round the world, they answer, back by morning. Ted Kooser.
All right. Well, we know Ted Kooser. By the way, when is the Ibbetson reading? We're having an Ibbetson reading?
We have an Ibbetson reading and a potluck open to the public
July 9th.
Wednesday, July 9th.
7 p.m.?
6
6 p.m.?
6 p.m.
And will
Free
there be
food and beverage. No
Okay.
wine.
Okay, at the Central Branch Somerville Library on Highland Ave.
Yep.
So be there, be square, meet the poets, have some food. And the new Bagel Bard edition, the Somerville Literary Group, edition 9 is out. So that's available on lulu.com. You can get that, Steve Vines. And I wrote the introduction. Steve Vines published it. So thank you very much. And next week at Poet to Poet, right away, we're going to have Zach Brose. And he's a literary man about town. So that should be an interesting show. He started the Boston Poetry Union some years ago. Thank you, Harris, for being on Poet to Poet.
Thanks for having me,
Writer
Doug.
to Writer.
Thanks a lot.
And remember that Harris runs the Boston National Poetry Festival, and that will be April of next year. And he also has a great series at the Armory with Gloria Mindock at the Arts Armory in Somerville. So thank you very much.
And thanks again, Doug.
See us again real soon here on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer, with your host, Doug Holder, here in the heart of Union Square, in the heart of the Paris of New England. And that's the way it is. Thank you. Anyway.
Are we off?
Thought we are according to our timer, but that's the way it is in the Paris of New England.
Nice program.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You interviewed nicely.
Thank you.
You brought out the best in me rather than...
We're on the air still. Anyway, by the way, someone's coming in right now. Come in.
You sure it's still on there?
Yeah.
Maybe we're frozen in time.
Might be frozen in time. Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer.